I believe it is human nature to fall into sort of hyperbole, to believe that the time you're living in here and now is the best of times, the worst of times, to quote Charles Dickens. But that's not entirely true. As a historian, I know that things that we experience now have happened in some sense before. There is precedence in some way. There's some manner of thought, of human experience that's come before that has some shadow of similarity. Nothing is completely original. Nothing is completely undone. There's always a place to look back and see where we're coming from and where we're going. Take the modern political situation. I follow politics very closely. It was my minor in college. I'm interested in politics. Many people have said that the current vitriol between our Congress, controlled by the Republicans, and our presidency, controlled by our Democratic president, are at a contention that has never been seen before. This level of contention is unheard of. However, John Quincy Adams by Fred Kaplan. I've just been reading this biography, and it's quite good. It focuses a little bit more on John Quincy Adams' writing than I would personally like, but overall it's a solid biography. A little bit praising of times, maybe a little overmuch so, but biographies tend to do that. But as I look at John Quincy Adams, he's an interesting character. He was the son of a president, the son of a founding father. He had a lofty position in the world growing up. He was well educated. He was a diplomat. He spoke several languages. He was well versed in the world of old Europe and in the new America, and had a grand vision for the United States. So when he became president in 1825, naturally he wanted to implement this vision. However, he came in at a very contentious time. He won a very hotly contested election that came down to the House of Representatives, where he barely nudged out Andrew Jackson. And well, Andrew Jackson was the populist and popular with the people, and his people were very strong in Congress, especially early in John Quincy's presidency. And in fact, they would completely control Congress in the second 2 years of John Quincy Adams' presidency. So here was John Quincy Adams, a man with a vision, a man who wanted to change the nation. He wanted to give a new infrastructure to the nation. He wanted the government to build roads, canals, steamships, the burgeoning railroads. He had a great vision, a concept. However, his vision was undercut almost immediately. How John Quincy Adams saw the nation didn't really matter, because the Congress was at odds with him and contention with him. They wouldn't let him pass any of his ideas or his thoughts. And John Quincy Adams was a little old-fashioned even at that time in his own way. He wouldn't veto things unless he believed they were unconstitutional. He thought Congress should move all legislation. So in spite of his big grand vision, he really couldn't get forward any of it. And the vitriol that went back and forth was incredible. The attacks and the strength, and in fact, in the coming up election, 1828, when Jackson and Adams found themselves running for president again, the attacks were so bad that Andrew Jackson's wife was brought into it. See, his marriage to her was sort of questionable. There was some rumor that she wasn't actually officially divorced. She had divorced, which was unusual for the day. And there's some rumors she hadn't actually officially divorced before marrying Jackson. And so the vicious attacks that came out over this were atrocious, easily as bad as anything we've had in this day and age. Adams himself was attacked as a monarchist, as all sorts of factually untrue things about him came out again and again and again. So yes, this was a very vicious time in politics, and John Quincy Adams was at the center of it as President of the United States from 1825 to 1829. And as I said, he had a vision for the nation, but couldn't get any of it across, really. He did get some small victories as president, and actually some diplomatic ones, as he continued to push his diplomatic program that he'd worked as Secretary of State in the 8 years before he was president. But overall, John Quincy Adams' presidency, well, unfortunately most historians see it as a bit of a failure because, well, he couldn't push forward that agenda. Now, can we view it as his fault that he didn't push forward that agenda? Yes and no, I guess you could say. I mean, yes, in the fact that, well, it just didn't frankly get done, but no in the fact that he was up against a Congress that wouldn't let him get any of it done. Currently, could you argue the same for our current president? That he has a vision for the country, that he has an agenda? But there's a Congress that won't let him, and maybe it's a populist movement once again that's not letting him do that. Now, it's hard to say because historians like a little distance in time, a little objectivity before they say exactly what is and what isn't. But even today, I can see a relevance between these two times and point to similarities. Now, that doesn't mean they're completely the same, of course, but it's always good to find those connections, those little spots that make time seem similar, that make us realize that the human experience is consistent throughout time. There are things, people, places, and things that quite frankly just have relationships to each other, and humans act in a very human manner. What would you expect, I guess, right? So overall, I'd have to say that I recommend this book by Fred Kaplan. It's quite good if you have the time. I am fascinated by John Quincy Adams and find him a very interesting character in history, and I think he's a smart guy. I mean, I'd like John Quincy Adams. So there you have it. There's a little relationship between what happened then and what happened now, and remember, those connections almost always exist in some way, shape, or form. You just have to go look for them and get a little historical perspective.